Have you seen any additional news on Giannis yet?
I hopped on Twitter right before this. It says he was doing warm-ups, like his normal warm-up routine, and that he would there would be a decision made like right
Oh,
after.
like game
So
time.
it could be happening in the next 30 minutes, I would guess. Just got to keep those Woj
I
bomb
know. I was
notifications
like,
on.
let me just put Woj up on my Twitter and just keep it.
Yeah, that's probably all you need, and maybe we'll get something mid conversation. But as far as I know, he's questionable and he's warming up, and so they'll probably say something at the end of his warm up.
That's wild. I love it. So
But
I don't know where you want to start, because I know like the Giannis health status storyline is essentially
I
uh,
think we need to start there. I feel like that's just like
it's
the
just hanging over
looming,
everything.
yeah, that's hanging over everything.
Um,
Um,
my question when we were thinking about this is like, do you think he should go? Because it seems like he's at the point where it's like questionable but possible.
yes,
So like, do you think he should go?
it's so hard to tell. It's like because we're obviously not medical professionals and we don't fully understand the extent of his injury. From what it seemed like, if the previous series was going to go to seven, I feel like they were communicating that he would have played Game Seven,
Mm-hmm.
and I think with the way the schedule was mapped out, Game Seven would have been yesterday, Monday. So again, that's a different scenario because it's like that was a game. If it was a Game Seven, it would have been like a win or go home, must win. You need to have your best player on the court situation. Whereas this is like the start of a series. Can you afford to kind of let him sit for a couple days and then see what happens? So like in my mind, I wouldn't want to like force him into playing today or like push it. I would sit him out at least for this first game and then kind of like see how it plays out without him. I mean, they're riding on pretty good momentum. The Bucks are of
Yeah.
those last two games that they played without him and got those W's, like everyone kind of stepped up. So I feel like they can kind of just like carry that over into this series, just kind of be like, let's keep the same mentality that, we're playing without Giannis. Everyone that's not Giannis needs to kind of up their game a little bit. So in my mind, I was like, I feel like he shouldn't if he's gonna return, don't return game one, like ease into it. That's kind of my thought, but I don't know how serious it is. I don't know what the likelihood of him like hyperextending his knee again, like if he rushes it, like I don't know if that's what's at risk of him going in too early, or if it's just like he's gonna come back and just not even be relevant because he's not gonna be like even 50 to 60%. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
is that the concern? Is it the concern him being injured, or is the concern him not even being like enough healthy enough to contribute?
Yeah. I feel like Giannis is in his mind ready to go because I feel like he's always ready to go. I felt like he was ready like in the like first game after the first game he missed. Like when I saw him on the sidelines and like how hype and stuff, I'm like, I feel like he's already ready to go, just like being who he is. But strategically, I 100% think like as much as it pains me to like, oh, I want to see the hope. Like I feel like he's got to sit, and it's like for two primary reasons. One, the one you kind of alluded to of like health wise, like don't risk it if he can hurt himself more. But I
Yeah.
feel like strategically it makes a lot of sense because like they're on the road. They don't have to win game one. Like, see if you can go get a like gut punch, steal game one with no Giannis. If you lose, that's expected anyway. Like, but if you win, then you're literally like changing their whole game plan. Like you can, I would completely dangle the we don't know if he's gonna come back for game two either thing, and then like completely like how do they game plan for Giannis being out there now game two? Like they've got a lot of options. I feel like sitting him out, and like you're saying, it's like it's just a good opportunity to feel things out too. Like see how because I honestly like without getting into this yet, I think the Suns are just like a better team overall. But Giannis is that like nobody on the Suns has a check for that.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a perfect opportunity for them to just be like, you know what, we're gonna go no Giannis. We're gonna see how our team responds because like guys like Brooke Lopez and stuff have been stepping up, like playing how we always thought he should be playing. Like in
Totally.
those games where he's out, I'm like, why are you at 7-3 not already under the
Yeah,
paint all the time,
exactly.
catching alley oops and lobs and stuff? So I'm like, maybe they'll get that kind of energy out of him, and then they'll be able to compound on it for the next game. But
I totally agree. I think that kind of segues into just kind of other X factors aside from Giannis, which is that exactly. Brooke Lopez playing the way he has in these last couple games, Drew Holiday being the person that the Bucks wanted to have in this playoff, like in the playoffs, a reliable person that can score and defend like their best players. And Chris Middleton, I always say like that dude's just one of the most underrated players in the NBA because he can get buckets, and if he can do that consistently, that's going to be huge. That's like their big three right now without Giannis, which is funny to think with
yeah,
like including Brooke Lopez in that, but it's so true. And he was an all star at one point. Like when he was on Brooklyn, Brooke Lopez was an all star. And so if he can continue to play at that caliber, I think that they can definitely have a chance at least. Like you said, one of these two road games, I feel like they can potentially take them without Giannis and then kind of play it by ear there, buy Giannis a little bit more time.
yeah, and it's weird to think about like other X factors for like the teams too, because I like and looking at their rosters, I'm like, I feel like I know what I'm gonna get from most people,
Yeah,
and there's not a ton of like other than like Middleton, like home versus away. There's not a ton of like heat check guys other than Brent Forbes on Milwaukee. And then
yeah,
I thought about our old friend PJ Tucker, who has done like nothing for pretty much the entire playoffs, like not even doing the hit corner threes thing that they brought him there for on
yep,
like the defense. And I'm like, it's really defense and threes for him. So if he can actually have a couple games where he's making those threes, and they can have him out there, I think he'll be huge for being able to guard a guy like Jay Crowder, and
yeah.
cause some problems for him. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too, is not just PJ Tucker, but that's definitely part of it. But the threes in general, I feel like for the Bucks, that was like their game in the regular season. And I don't have all the stats in front of me, but I feel like in the last couple series, they haven't been as good as they usually are in terms of, shooting at a high clip. And so I think that'll be key too, just in terms of their offense. And like if those threes are going down, they put themselves in a really good position. But yeah, if PJ's not hitting those open corners and you're not getting like one or two from like a Bryn Forbes or a Connington or something, then they're going to be in trouble. But if that shot's going down, if they can shoot at the percentage that they did in the regular season, I think they have a chance even without Giannis. And that's
yeah,
another point. That's another point too. Again, not to spend too much time on the Giannis thing, but going back to that and the 3 pointer being kind of an X factor as well. Like I feel like with some players that are playing not 100%, like when Harden came back, and then like in the last series when Trae Young came back, like those guys can be kind of decoys or like force the defense to at least like respect them a little bit because they can shoot threes even if they're not 100%. They can, in theory, like you still have to be like, even if you're not fully healthy, like you're still James Harden, you could probably still shoot a three. Um, but Giannis, like if you threw Giannis out there, it wouldn't have that same effect. Like you can't really use him as much as a decoy because
yeah,
his game is all about driving and like getting out on the break and like dominating in the paint. But if he's not healthy enough to do those things, then he's not really going to be like a decoy. Like they're not going to like worry about him shooting outside jumpers and stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah. And Giannis, like you were saying, him being out, they've already been cold from three, and
Yeah.
he's the reason that they get all the open threes. And
Yeah.
I pulled it up while you were talking. The Bucks are in the playoffs in the 17 games. They're shooting 31% from three.
Yeah.
On the flip side, the Suns shooting 37% and are the third best 3-point shooting team in
Yeah.
the playoffs.
See,
So yeah, a lot of not so great signs for Milwaukee right now.
I think that that's a great point that you just brought up too with the Suns. I kind of feel like when you pin their like kind of like role players or just guys that could contribute, even if it's like one or two threes, I trust their players that can do that a lot more than the Conningtons and Bryn Ford. Like if you look at like Cam Johnson, campaign, like Bridges, like I feel like I have more confidence in those guys outperforming the Bucks other guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then, well, I'll save that for the the predictions. But there's another interesting stat that will be pretty glaring and scary for Bucks fans.
Yeah, I think another thing to factor in, just this is more generally speaking, is I think a big criticism is going to be with the Suns being like, okay, every round that they played a team that had an injury to their best player, right? Like, I feel like that's going to be kind of what everyone's going to criticize them for, but I don't know. I don't buy that as being like they had a free pass. Like they obviously had to deal with their like I mean Chris Paul was hurt for part of that time too. Like they've had to deal with that same stuff and that's just part of the playoffs. So like I don't love that. I don't love that storyline of just like all right, they played the Lakers, AD was hurt and then they played, the Clippers and Kawhi was out and it's like or
Yeah.
Jamal yeah, like all that stuff. And that's another thing too, like on the flip side, I don't think that necessarily means that like without Giannis, the Suns are just going to dominate. Like I still think that like it still took them what was it 6 games to beat the Clippers without Kawhi. It's like it's not like all of a sudden without Kawhi it was like a free pass. And I think that'll be a similar situation with the Bucks. It's like just because Giannis, if for some reason he doesn't play maybe like 2 games, I think that it's not going to be easy breezy for them. I think they'll
Yeah.
still kind of have to put up their best games, their best fight.
Yeah, and it's definitely not open and shut for for I would say either team for countless reasons. One of them you kind of brought up is a good segue into your CP3 legacy
Nice.
topic, and that the counter storyline that I think about sometimes to look at all the injured guys that they didn't have to deal with. And then I think back to like CP3's playoff career, and I'm like, look at all the times people didn't have to deal with CP3.
Yeah.
Like it's like literally the flip side of like,
Yeah.
well, a lot of guys probably might not necessarily be where they are if CP3 wasn't hurt. So
Yeah.
It brought me to like obviously we're gonna have these conversations about like, hey, like where is CP3 like ranking on the like top point guards of all time list? And so I looked up a couple lists of like
Yeah.
best point guards of all time, and I think it's like the 7 that I found essentially. I just it was kind of the quick version of looking it up, but just kind of off the top of my head. And then
Yeah.
looking at a few lists, it was like you've got Magic, Steph, Isaiah, Oscar, Steve Nash, Stockton, Gary Payton. Were like those
Okay.
7. And then I was like, where does CP3 jump on that list compared to where he is currently? And then
Yeah.
I'm like looking at guys that have rings there. I'm like, there's Magic, there's Steph, there's Isaiah.
Isaiah.
I think Oscar won one.
He did. Yep.
And
With the
then I'm like,
Bucks, actually.
yeah, okay, with the Bucks. So and then after that, I'm like, no rings for Nash,
No rings.
no
Yeah.
rings for Stockton, no rings for Peyton. And I'm like, huh. I think just by virtue of him even being there, like Stockton has lost in the finals a couple times. Peyton lost in the finals.
Yep. And
Nash,
both the Jordan Bulls.
yeah,
So it's almost like an asterisk there.
yeah. And so I'm like, I wonder if he just sneaks right into the top 5 or at least top 6
You're saying
This,
if he wins the title, or are you
I,
saying
I
either way?
I think before he's even won it, he's like in this like top 7, 8
Yeah, no,
conversation.
I right now with like even if he doesn't win it, just making the finals finally right now with this team and just the storyline, I would probably put him over a Gary Payton for sure, right?
Yep.
And then like maybe Stockton. The reason that Stockton has the up is that Stockton's like the assist leader, like the
Everything.
all-time assist leader. Um,
And he
but
played for
he's
his
neck
long
and neck.
league
And
too.
then yeah, Steve Nash. I think he's right there with Steve Nash too. Although Steve Nash has the MVPs, right?
Yeah, he won those MVPs, and it can be argued that one of them should have gone to Kobe.
I mean,
But
Shaq will tell you that literally every chance he gets, he will tell you that
yeah,
you deserve those MVPs.
so it to me when I looked at it, my gut said like if he wins this title, he's guaranteed top 5 to me.
Yeah,
At the very least, like 5A, 5B with Nash,
yeah,
and or Stockton. So um, I don't know. I that really made me happy, and like in terms of like who I'm rooting for, especially knowing like Giannis is under 30. I'll just say that
yeah,
extremely young. Will have a ton more opportunities. I don't know how many more ops the Suns will have. I think they'll be back and good next year, regardless.
yeah,
But this feels like between like circumstance and health of like their whole team in general, and they've just got like it's just been a super different year. Um,
yeah,
in part, I think about like the shortened season, and I'm like that probably has been helpful for Chris Paul having 10 less games to have to like navigate through. Even though like this whole playoff series, the whole playoffs has been just like extremely intense in terms of like the every other like game type situation. But I don't know. Feels like a very good situation for CP3. So that's who I'm rooting for.
yeah. No,
League
I mean,
for point guard in the top 5 point guards of all time.
yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I will say that it like previously I wasn't the biggest Chris Paul fan, and I always felt like people were overrating him. And the reason being was the playoffs, and I was that was always my argument. Like, okay, let's have this debate when he makes a conference finals. Literally, that was the thing. It's like let's have that debate when he makes, and then when he made the conference finals, like okay, let's have this debate when he actually goes to the finals. And so like I can't say that anymore. Like I literally can't
Yeah.
say that anymore. And not only like is he making the finals, like the circumstances. I mean, like we've talked about it before. It's like the fact that he came onto this team that was fighting to even like make a playoff, or like they were invited to the bubble last year, and everyone was just like, why is this team even like in the bubble? They went undefeated, and they're like there were a big storyline, but like I don't think anyone expected that big of a year over year leap, even when Chris Paul was added to that team. It's like, I mean, we talked about it in our like, we can go back to our previews, our season previews, and we were definitely hyped that we're like, okay, CP is definitely going to make this team better. He's going to make DeAndre Ayton better. He's going to unlock Devin Booker even more so. But I don't think our thoughts were like they're going to go to the finals. Like I don't think that was ever really like the thought. It was like
Yeah.
they're going to be good. They're going to make the playoffs, and that's like the step that they were going for. I'm sure it's just like, hey, we didn't even make the playoffs last year. Now we have CP. We have a good leader, and that's like the short term goal. But like they've just exceeded expectations so much. So like adding that factor in, it's like clearly CP was a huge part. Again, I don't want to like downplay Monty Williams and the coaching staff and all of the other pieces there, but like CP is a huge part of why they are where they are. So in that in itself, like that solidifies this finals run. And like I said, even if they don't win the ring, I think it still puts him in the conversation when you're talking about top five. But before, to me, it was just kind of like, okay, he hasn't even made the finals, so it's like how are we going to put this guy in top five? But now he has a chance, and I think that that's the key to him even being in that top five conversation.
Yeah. And then top 5 in MVP voting too for this year.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
number 5. So
And if you remember when we were talking about it, I had him so high. I was like, he's my number three.
like he got I was looking it up. He got 2 first place votes
Well,
backcourt
there you
MVP,
go.
which is ginormous if you ask me.
Oh
Like
yeah.
we're like, nope. And those people are probably looking pretty sharp right now too. Like given all the other guys have fallen away slowly. So
Yeah, and I will say I referenced it our like preseason preview. You and I were both we spent a good 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes just talking about DeAndre Ayton. So I feel like we look pretty
yeah,
good now in hindsight. There was definitely some moments early in the season where, he was still kind of struggling or like finding his way and I was like, "Oh man, maybe we were both way off on that." But dude, he's been so consistent in the playoffs too. Like he's probably been I mean, like obviously there's the Booker and CP, but he's been like, if you look at his numbers, dude, he's been so consistent, just doing what he needs to do in terms of like 20 and 10, pretty much, like double doubles. Like he's been the rock. I feel like.
yeah. And they're gonna need him big time for this series, especially if Brooke Lopez remembers that he's 7 feet tall.
That he's a big that can
Yeah.
actually play like
Like
traditional center.
yeah, like I wonder who talked to him over the last couple of games, like, hey, the threes are not falling.
Well, like I guess I mean again, like maybe silver lining, but the fact that Giannis isn't playing is what unlocked it. I think because
Yeah.
I think maybe Brook playing that type of game doesn't necessarily work when you have Giannis on the court, right? Because Giannis is kind of clogging up
Yeah,
the
he's the
paint and all
driving
that.
lanes for it. Yeah.
And so when you don't have that, it's like you kind of need to have some kind of presence in there. So Brooks just got to kind of pivot. But you're right though. That's his game, and that's where he thrives. I mean, he can obviously shoot the three, but it's like they're getting more out of him in this role right now when Giannis isn't on the court.
And without knocking Bud and his lack of adjustments, which technically he, in fairness, hasn't had to make. But I'm like, doesn't that tell you that maybe you should have some lineups where Giannis and Brooke are not on the floor
Yeah, right.
at the same time, where Brooke can do his thing? So
And maybe
like
maybe that's what he'll do now. Like
yeah,
if Giannis comes
maybe he like
back,
figured this out by like seeing Giannis not play, or yeah, maybe he'll adjust those lineups if Giannis has got limited minutes or something. So
yeah. I do want to get to predictions. I don't want to run too long here, but
yeah, yeah,
you bring up a good point with coaching. We didn't really talk too much about like matchups. Like I think you kind of referenced it with like PJ Tucker probably playing
yeah.
a key role, like maybe guarding Booker. Like is that kind of what you were thinking? Like I'm curious to see what they roll with because you have a lot of versatility when you're the Bucks and you have Drew Holiday. It's like who do you put Drew Holiday on because there's CP but then there's also Booker. It's like two elite guards. Who do you want to put Holiday on first?
I I I can see them because it's going to be more important to stop Chris Paul than it will be Booker, just because
Yeah, because he kind of sets the
everything.
tone, sets the
So
pace, kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
I could see Drew guarding Paul. I could
Yep.
see Crowder um, guarding middle. Mix it up. I could see Middleton guarding
Right.
Booker, and then
Oh, Middleton on Booker.
yeah.
Okay.
So and then currently, like I guess Crowder would have guarded Giannis, but there's nobody really to or Bridges maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know. They're fortunate that they don't have to deal with that potentially because I'm
Yeah.
like I was looking at their roster. I'm like, who do you put on
Right.
Giannis?
Yeah. I think
You're-
they would probably start with Crowder.
yeah,
Or it'd
so
be like
it's
kind of like by
yeah.
committee and just put a
Yeah, it's
couple
like the
different.
LeBron thing where like I guess you gotta put Crowder on him because he's the only guy size wise that kind of has a shot. So
Yeah, and Bridges is a good defender, but he's not big enough, I feel like.
yeah, so in terms of predictions, so like as we start getting to that, one of the things that I took note of was for the Suns, in my mind, they've got 5 of the 9 best players that are out there, and 5 of the 8 without Giannis. So you've got Giannis as number 1, then CP Booker, then Middleton and Drew.
Yep.
Then you've got Crowder. Then you've got Lopez.
You're putting Crowder over Aiton? Or did you say Aiton already?
I didn't even say Aiden, so it's even worse. How did I literally forget Aiden on this list? Wow.
Yeah,
So
no, I put Aiton right after all those guys.
Yeah, so it's even worse. Oh man, I was like somebody's missing, but I didn't realize. So they've got like six of the best 10 players, and
Sure.
then six of the best nine if Giannis is out. Um, so it's not it's hard for them looking at it. Now I know they're like their defense first, um, but when looking at it that way, um, the Suns they've got all the cards in their hands, so it'll be interesting. But do you want to do predictions?
Yeah,
Get
let's
into it
talk
real
about
quick.
it. It sounds like you're leaning one way, so you
Yeah.
you can continue there.
So the only thing I can really say on the Bucks is they've got, if healthy, the best player in the series by far. Like, not to knock Paul or Booker, but I'm like, if I'm starting a team with Giannis, Paul, or Booker, everybody's choosing Giannis 100% of the time.
Totally.
And impact wise, like we know how much of a difference that dude makes. Um, but there's two things that kind of, or the main thing that really gets me about the Bucks, and it could be to their detriment or to their benefit, I guess, is I feel like they're like one of the primary culprits of like playing up or down to their competition.
Yeah.
So when they should have been dominating the Hawks, they were just like, okay, whatever. Like losing games, they should have destroyed them with no Trae Young, and then with no Giannis, here they are, like with like now all of a sudden they're on fire, like they're playing super hard defense. So I get the sense they're gonna play up to their competition in this series, but I've got like a three-way prediction that kind of goes all the same way. If Giannis is healthy, which I think he's like 80%, Suns in seven. If Giannis is not healthy, which like where he's like playing but like not injured, like 50%, I got Suns in six. And if there's no Giannis at all, like for some reason he gets hurt, or if he plays and has to leave, then I got Suns in five. So in all of my scenarios, I have the
The
Suns
Suns
winning.
win in all scenarios. Okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah. No,
my,
I
my overall prediction is I feel like there's a like not quite healthy Giannis, so I'm going Suns in six.
yeah, I honestly had something written down, and the more we talked about this, the more I'm just kind of like, maybe I need to change it. And so I have Bucks in six, and this is all under the assumption that Giannis is ahead of schedule because it does seem like I was actually initially just thinking he would for sure not play this first game. Now it sounds like he potentially might, but even if he doesn't, I think he'll be ready for at least game two,
Mm-hmm.
at the latest game three. It doesn't seem like there's a scenario now that
Where
he's
he
not going
doesn't
to play
play.
at all, or unless he plays this game and God forbid, like re-hurts himself, which would be the worst case scenario. But I'm under the assumption he's coming back at least by game two or three, and they take one of the games in Phoenix. And when he's back, he is, like you said, at least 80% there. And for me, the biggest X factor, we talked about it, was the trio of Middleton, Holiday, and Brooke Lopez, just like continuing what they've been doing these last two games against the Hawks and just balling out like the former All Stars that they are. That's going to be a huge, huge factor. And I don't know. I say that now, and I'm going to stick with it. But Suns in seven is kind of like what I like hope for slash starting to think now after our conversation, like just talking it all out, because I think that all the things I said will be will be like factored into the Bucks like making this very competitive and like having a fighting chance and giving it their all, like Giannis coming back and everyone else stepping up. But then the home court advantage thing too, I think will lean heavily towards the Suns because that crowd has been just like insane. I mean, the Bucks crowd has also been awesome, but like the Suns have just been like Suns fans have just like been through so much of just like really really crappy basketball for a long time now that like they're all in like die hard, and I feel like that's really going to help them with the home court advantage. And yeah, I feel like if it's going to be super, super competitive, it's going to come down to 7, and there's no way they're going to lose at game 7 at home.
Dude, I don't know all of their histories either, but I was just glancing at the rosters and I was like, is this the first NBA Finals where like nobody has ever played in an NBA Finals?
So there's one. There's literally one. It's Jay Crowder, and
I
it
was
was
gonna
last
say it
and
has
it was
to be
last
correct.
year.
Like,
And that was his only finals experience was last year in the 6 whatever was it 6 games or 5 games? I don't remember.
5. Yeah, I think it was 5. Yeah,
So
or
that's
maybe it
his.
was 6. Yes,
That
but
was the extent, and it was it was bubble finals. So
yeah,
I got to put that asterisk
with no
because yeah,
crowd.
zero crowd. And yeah, that's literally the one person who's ever played in a finals is Jay Crowder.
Yeah,
Out of
like,
all across both teams.
so the jitters will be intense.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point, man. I was thinking about that too. I was like, that is wild.
Because I was
That
looking at their roster, I'm like,
all fresh blood, all fresh blood.
they're all so young, like a lot, like across the rosters, and then the Bucks are a little older in some spots. But I'm like, still, none of these guys have
No,
been in this position before, so
it's wild.
it'll be it's they're gonna be leaning a lot on Chris, and he
Yeah,
hasn't been here either.
right. But he's still like
Yeah, he's like the
experienced.
old wily vet, and I'm like, nope, he hasn't played in this situation either. But like
Yeah, like how crazy is that to think? Like you mentioned Booker being in the top 3 of the best players. This is his first playoffs, period. So like that's even crazier to think. Like not only is this their first finals, like this is the first time he's even been in the postseason.
crazy. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm also rooting for a 7-game series because it has that like it reminded me of like the Spurs Knicks series where you got kind of a wacky season with truncated in the
Yeah, with the lockout, you mean?
yeah, so it's like you kind of got a weird season, a lot of injuries, a lot of
Yeah.
like just weird stuff going on, and then you got these two teams that people are like, hey.
Yeah.
And then when you think about it, even back to like our earlier predictions, back to the like at midseason when we were like, who are the best teams, and we're like, the Bucks and Suns
Yeah.
were in that conversation the whole time. So Lakers and Nets aside, like they were some of the folks we were expecting to be here, but we just assumed that other people would be healthy and available, and they weren't.
For sure.
So, but that's
So
part of the game too. So
I guess last thing I had on here, like with your prediction, do you have a prediction for who will win MVP in your scenario? Finals MVP?
I think that if the Suns win, no matter how he plays, Chris Paul's getting MVP. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see
Unless
averaging like 30 a game.
I was gonna say unless Booker has a 70-point game like he has
Yeah.
once before, but not in the playoffs, obviously. But unless Booker just goes completely nuts and yeah, like you said, averages like 30 plus a game, it's got to be CP.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I just can't see a scenario where he doesn't. In the flip side, and then I'll ask you this question too. If the Bucks pull it off, just given his lack of not being healthy, and like there's a small piece of me that feels like we're going to see a different Middleton. Like it feels like those 2 games with no Giannis like helped him remember like, dude, you're an all-star team.
Yeah, gave him
Like,
confidence.
you're an Olympian. Like you've done a lot.
Yeah.
So I could see there's a small piece of me that could see Middleton also getting it depending on how the series goes. But,
So that was my pick. If the Bucks win in my scenario, Bucks win in 6, Middleton's my MVP, and that I mean, that's not really like a hot take, but it's all for all the reasons you just said. Like in this scenario, Giannis does come back, but not to the point where he's like dominant and like changing the series or whatever. Like he'll be back, and that'll be huge. But it's going to be Middleton who needs to carry it into that before Giannis is even like fully healthy. So that's my pick. Bucks and 6, Middleton MVP.
I like it.
I'm sure if I like put money on that, The odds are probably so low.
Dude, do it. Go for it.
God.
I had a couple of people that were putting like random little dollar amounts on like the like live betting stuff, and it's
Yeah.
just like work. This whole series, this whole playoffs has just been wonky in general. I'm like, maybe this is a. I'm not gonna start gambling now on it because I'm like, everything's gonna go wrong if I try to. Um,
Yeah. No, I
but
had a buddy who will win a lot of money if the Suns win. And he also had money on the Hawks, so he was like praying for the situation where it was Hawks versus Suns, where it was just like no matter who wins, I'm gonna win money. And I was like, wow, that would have been epic, but the
yeah,
Hawks fell through.
well, that's awesome. I'm rooting for him and Chris Paul.
All right, any last words on this final series?
Yeah, this has been a good season for NBA chatter, and I'm like actually gonna like go back and take a look at some of our earlier clips too, just to like
It's fun. I was doing it recently.
yeah,
Specifically that talk like we did talk about Aiton a lot. So he was my pick for most improved and he was your pick for first time All-Star.
yeah. And now he might be first time NBA champion. That would be